So good evening all. Thanks for your interest in attending the webinar to learn more about the House Bill 1110 and middle housing requirements. I'm Navusha Pentecote, Urban Design Planner with the City of Edmonds. Rose, do you want to introduce?
Hi all, my name's Rose, a planner with City of Edmonds as well.
Great. Let's get started and I'll just share my screen in a minute. So today we will be discussing about the middle housing requirements. So just a bit of background information on what middle housing is, what the characteristics are, and why middle housing is important in today's housing context. The requirements of the 1110 House Bill, which was released in 2023 by Department of Commerce under the GMA, Growth Management Act. And we will also be looking at what the model ordinance is saying and what its implications are. And we'll briefly discuss how the House Bill 1110 integrates with the House Bill 1337, which is related to the ADUs. So the main goal of the webinar today is just to simplify the information and pass it on to the public. Um, just we want to hear from the public what the main concerns are and know your questions. So the Q&A will be enabled. You will have a little option at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. You can also use the Ask Us form, which I will be pasting in the chat very soon. This Ask Us form is also on our website, and you can use it anytime to kind of send us questions or comments. And once the presentation is over, we will go through all the questions and try to answer as many as we can, depending on the time. Some questions might need further research. So we will be posting an FAQ document by the end of next week with all the questions we receive from public throughout the week. What is middle housing? So middle housing or missing middle housing can be defined as house scale buildings with multiple units instead of single dwelling units. Since the mid 20th century, the focus of the housing sector has always been on creating either single family large homes or apartment buildings. So the smaller scale built form in between these two scales is the missing piece of the housing puzzle. And it's hard to find because it's often not available. So missing middle housing is a range of multi-unit or clustered housing types keep compatible in size and single family homes that help meet the changing needs and priorities of housing and meet the need for more housing choices at different price points. Characteristics of middle housing. So the image shown here is a spectrum of middle housing existing in the Puget Sound region. So some of the characteristics are they're smaller in size and well-designed units. They're private, just like single-family residences, and share open spaces to create vibrant community living, support walkable environments, leading to less car dependence, and they accommodate a wide range of lifestyles and housing types. So they come in different sizes, small, medium, and large. Not all small size housing is middle housing again. So it needs to be compatible with the single family scale, form, and character. So the majority of these housing typologies can accommodate 2 to 4 units in a building or in a lot. And at the upper end, which is towards the extreme right of this image, can have up to 19 units per building. So middle housing, as the name suggests, it is middle in two forms. A middle form or mid-scale housing in between detached housing units and the multifamily apartment buildings, as discussed previously. And on the other hand, housing that's more attainable for middle income groups or families. According to the Urban Land Institute survey, 76% of Americans are interested in walkable lifestyles, and 50% consider it as a high priority. So this demand keeps increasing, and that creates a financial opportunities for developers. So middle housing achieves the demand for neighborhood living rather than city living. And the current affordable crisis makes us think about how to deliver a diverse, affordable range of housing units, not just for low income groups, but also for the middle income households, like who work as nurses, teachers, and so on. So this is why there's more demand for diverse range of housing options. And this is why middle housing is considered as a potential solution, because there's simpler, smaller units with lower land costs and construction costs with the same look and feel of a single family home. So why do we need middle housing? So in America, 50 to 75% of the existing housing stock is detached single family. And that's the same trend in the Puget Sound region as well. So in 2021, 70% of the households didn't have children, and the trend is expected to continue the same. It's important to respond to the changing needs and demographics. So as the nationwide demographics are changing, most of the housing households are living alone, rapidly aging population and shrinking household sizes, and couples with few or no kids. So the housing preferences change, and smaller homes um, are easy to maintain. They feel more safe and secure in neighborhoods and walkable environments. Promoting attainability, financial attainability is another key aspect. So if we are spending 30% of our income on housing, that's feasible. But if we are spending anything more than 30 to 50%, it's considered cost burden. And way more than 50% is severely cost burdened. In 2020, 49% of renters and 27% of homeowners in the US are cost burdened. So smaller footprint of houses, which are more affordable, are really important to address the affordability and attainability aspect of housing. Density matters. So this is another key aspect. As we place density and plan for compact growth developments, that kind of creates the neighborhood feel and provides safe and secure environment for housing. Creating mixed-use centers and encouraging local businesses helps strengthen the small businesses and local economy to thrive. Increasing density often provides enough customers for businesses. So this density also allows other amenities like pedestrian infrastructure, public transit system, and more. So they also support multi-generational living and adapt to the changing trends of the housing as discussed before. Promote inclusive living, and also reduces urban sprawl, because a lot of these housing units also allow people to live close to work, so that reduces suburban sprawl and promotes sustainable development practices. Housing in Edmonds. So what's the situation like in Edmonds? So if you see, 65% of single family residential in Edmonds is single family. The median sale price in 2023 is $950,000, and the median income per household is $110,000. So that kind of shows a huge gap in what is needed and what people are earning. Also, owner-occupied housing is 69% and renter-occupied is 30%. So on the right side, we can see the percentage of change in sales and interest mortgage and the number of units sold in 2000 and 2023. That kind of shows how expensive housing is becoming and how unaffordable it is for people across different income ranges. The graph here kind of shows the distribution of housing for different income levels. So if you notice, extremely low income and very low income groups hardly have any options. And in 2023 and 2021, we can see that extremely low income housing units are sold or zero. And the low and moderate units are also relatively very less. So this kind of again shows the necessity to plan for diverse range of housing according to the another House bill that dictates that cities need to plan across various affordable various income levels. State of Washington guidance. So state has really put together some great materials out there that explains what middle housing look like and how does middle housing work and where does it fit in the existing context. What's currently preventing the construction of middle housing units? What are some of the best practices across the state? And what are the priorities for implementation and some background study on why it is really the need of the hour. AARP kind of recognized the importance and it's been supporting the whole idea of middle housing. So it has got some good material on their website. It talks about a lot of aspects of housing and also explains in a very clear way what the barriers are, or why middle housing can be an affordable housing solution, and some of the best practices again. So these guides will be linked here on the slide when the webinar is posted to our website. So we highly encourage you to go through these materials and always get back to us if there are any questions or comments, but it has got some great content that we encourage you to refer. HB1110 summary. So what does the bill say? These are different type of middle housing units. So duplex, triplex, fourplex, fiveplex, townhomes, stacked courtyard homes and cottage homes. So there are total 9 types of middle housing varieties that are allowed as per the House Bill 1110. And 6 out of the 9 must be allowed within the single family zones. So as a part of the comprehensive plan discussion, we have certain growth targets that we need to accommodate, and we need to find certain number of housing units. So we identified certain locations to add growth and have some criteria regarding how many middle housing units are required to achieve growth targets. So this can be referred in our comprehensive plan presentations, but please note that this does not prohibit the construction of single family residences. The whole idea of middle housing is to have a gradual shift from single family only zoning to zoning that allows different types of housing plus the single family detached housing. So the density requirements, cities with population between 2,500 and 25,000 and 75,000 are considered as tier 2 cities. So for these tier 2 cities, 2 units are allowed per lot on all the zones that allow single family residential, and 4 units are allowed per lot where at least 1 unit is affordable. How do we say if the 1 unit is affordable or not is something we will be discussing on the next slides. and 4 units per lot will be allowed within quarter-mile walking distance of a major transit stop. Well, Commerce encourages cities to extend this quarter mile to half a mile if we think our location would be apt for adding more density, or if there's existing infrastructure, if there's transit nearby, if there's growth being planned, and things like that. So quarter mile walking distance is a mandatory requirement, and half mile distance is something cities can choose. A major transit stop includes a high capacity transportation systems like bus rapid transit, which is on Highway 99, and also the Sounder Rail in the downtown waterfront area. So the map here on the right kind of shows all the zones that allow single family, the parts that are in yellow, and there are very small parcels that are colored in pink, which are the parcels that lie in the quarter mile walking distance from the major transit stop. And the requirements for these 4 lots or 2 lots does not apply to areas where there are within the critical areas or their buffers. And at the same time, they also do not apply to lots after unit lot subdivisions below 1,000 square foot. Affordability standards. So as mentioned on the previous slide, per lot 4 units are allowed if one of the units is affordable. So for the dwelling units that qualify as affordable units, there will be additional costs like utilities and stuff. So excluding telephone, all these costs must not exceed 30% of the household's monthly income. So this household monthly income median is determined by the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. And it also sets the income limits for these affordable units. For rental, it must not exceed 60% of the median household income. And for owner occupancy, the household income must not exceed 80% of the median household income for the county. And there are also other requirements, like these affordable units must remain as affordable for at least 50 years. Covenant or deed restrictions must be recorded to ensure we continue to rent, or ownership continues for these affordable units. And if the use of the property is changing permanently from providing affordable housing, the covenant or deed restriction must address criteria and policies that maintain public benefits. It also says that the affordable units must be comparable in size with the rest of the units that are on the lot. It should have same proportion of bedrooms, should be similar in character, and have similar functionality, just like the other units. So we cannot differentiate these affordable units from the rest of the units in a very obvious manner. So what are some of the key barriers? The change is challenging for anyone. So some of the barriers are the developer fees and incentives. The fee charged per unit is typically same regardless of the structure size in some instances for some cities. So that means it can be more affordable impact fee wise for a developer to build one large single family home rather than smaller units. So that's definitely a barrier for the developers. And lack of missing middle housing over the years. So there has always been this continuous trend of having single family residences, and missing middle housing residences were not allowed in most of the zones. So the zoning code restrictions kind of act as a barrier in this instance. And now there's an industry shift that's happening with these house bills and a need for more diverse housing across the nation. The code standards and the development regulations also play a major role in setting barriers, which must be removed with this House Bill 1110, and minimum parking requirements as well. So reducing parking is about providing more housing and active lifestyle, not forcing anyone to live without a car. So minimum parking requirements will still be provided, and there are certain mandatory requirements that we need to follow with parking as well, which we will be discussing very soon on the next couple of slides. So there are various concerns that can range from fears that a rental without an absent landlord will not won't maintain the property, and there's a belief that smaller housing units will negatively impact the real estate value, and there's the community opposition that can keep developers and public officials from considering innovative housing types. So before these decisions are made, it's always a transparent process, and community will be engaged at different levels in shaping these policies that are in the best interest of all the stakeholders. So House Bill Model Ordinance. I will pass it on to Rose to continue the conversation and to explain what the model ordinance says. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the model ordinance would look like in comparison to our current code. I put a link in our chat as well, and that's going to show the Washington State Department of Commerce page that's going to show the middle housing model ordinance for Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities, and then the user guide for that model ordinance. And then after this slideshow, we will link those on the PDF if you want to come back and see those as well, if you don't want to look at it right now. So in January, as part of this state legislation, the Department of Commerce had to create a model ordinance and then also a user guide for cities like ourselves to use. Edmonds is a Tier 2 city, as a reminder. That's specified in the RCW. So that's a city that's has a population of at least 25,000, but less than 75,000 as of 2020. So we're right kind of in the middle there, around 43,000 people. So Tier 2. Both of the ordinances were published in January, and something to keep in mind is the ordinances show requirements. They also show best practices and suggestions of how our ordinance could look. But something to keep in mind is if we don't have an ordinance in place, development regulations for middle housing, that model ordinance will supersede and preempt and invalidate our development regulations that don't meet those specifics by July 1st, 2025, which is 6 months after the comprehensive plan update. Next slide, Navisha. So mandatory provisions within that ordinance are number one. This is something really important to think about, is that there is no prohibition on permitting single family residences. It is still allowed as a use in most zones in Edmonds. And we're also, the state mandate is also not going to prohibit the provision of affordable housing. And none of the codes will supersede fire, building, public works, and utility codes as well. So again, health and safety codes come first. Any sort of zoning codes will come after those. And then no regulations for middle housing can be more restrictive than regulations for current single-family homes. And we have to have objective development regulations for that middle housing, and that's going to include setbacks, lot coverage, stormwater requirements, tree retention, critical area regulations, and all other health and safety provisions as well. Next slide. And so what's interesting about to back up a little bit, what's interesting about the model ordinance is there's, I guess, in comparison to the optional requirements, so the options, the optional alternatives versus the mandatory requirements. So there's actually very few mandatory development requirements. And so there's kind of a buffet of optional design standards and development regulations that can help us meet the housing goals as put forth in the comprehensive plan. And then one thing I do want to remind everyone is the purpose of this presentation is to just present what the state has set forth. We currently don't have any recommendations for those regulations for the city of Edmonds. So again, this is just informational and what we will be looking at when we do start making those recommendations. So again, mandatory development requirements is at least 2 units per lot, 4 units in areas close to transit, or those who are meeting those affordable housing provisions, as Navusha spoke about previously. No design review, so it would be administrative. It wouldn't be up to a design board. And so that really is tying it in with some other state regulations that are going to require clear and objective design standards. And then middle housing is going to be treated just like detached single family zoning. And so that's going to mean equal permit and review processes. And a specific requirement that they have are some open space requirements for cottage housing. And then we have that no off-street parking within half a mile of walking distance from a major transit stop. And then no more than 2 off-street parking spaces would be required on lots before they did a unit lot subdivision. One other thing to note is after this ordinance came out, there was some clarification from the state through House Bill 2321. So another thing that we will be posting on our website as soon as it's published is an updated ordinance, model ordinance, and updated user guide for that model ordinance. And really what HB 2321 did was it just clarified kind of minor things. So it was more about wording. So I don't know if there was any I don't believe there was any policy that was changed, but it did clarify the wording. So it clarified use of middle housing within critical aquifer recharge areas, how critical areas were looked at, the definition of cottage housing, and then a couple other small changes as well. And again, that new guidance is out summer 2024. And so we're kind of expecting it any day now. Once that's available, we will share that. Now, shall we go to the next slide? Okay, so again, as I stated, we do have some flexibility in how we can facilitate middle housing. So those were all the mandatory elements. Now I'm going to talk about some ways that we can meet those housing goals through citywide dimensional standards regulations. So in order to meet those housing goals, we can change the building height, we can change setbacks, we can change lot coverage or FAR, lot area and dimensions, impervious surface requirements, open space requirements, and landscaped area standards. Again, this will not, most likely all of these options are not going to be necessarily used together, and they may not be for all of the zones that we all of the zones that will support middle housing once we have a recommendation for that. But these are just some of the options that we have. Next slide. So I'm just going to go over again, I'm going to go over how the model ordinance compares with our current city code. And again, these are options to facilitate that middle housing. However, if we do not have regulations within 6 months of that, or July 1st, after that comprehensive plan update, this will go into effect. But again, this is kind of just like a menu of ways that we can increase that middle housing density. So model ordinance, again, these are kind of more best practice, and then kind of if we don't have something in place, these will go into effect. Maximum building height in the model ordinance is 35. That compares to our current city code maximum height of 25 feet. And one other thing I would like to add is these charts I'm showing are going to only apply to single family zones because single family homes are an allowable use within multifamily zones. Any standards that we apply to dwelling units will apply to the RM or the multifamily zones as well. However, it's not going to impact them as much because most of the development standards in those multifamily zones are very similar to the model ordinance code standards. So again, this is mainly for those single family zones. Minimum setbacks, typically a street setback within Edmonds is going to be 20 to 25 feet. That depends on the zone. So RS6, the smaller lots, those are typically within the Edmonds Bowl in downtown, have a 20-foot street setback, going all the way up to 25 feet once we're in the 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, 20,000 square foot lots. And then the side street setbacks in the model ordinance are 5 feet. Again, we don't have a side street setback. We just consider it a street. Again, that is 20 to 25 feet, depending on the zone. And then a typical side setback, again, depends on our zone, 5 to 25 feet. Model ordinance would say 5. And then rear, 15 to 25. And same with the rear alley, 15 to 25. As you can see, that would be 0 through the model ordinance. And then setback projections. Again, there's a projection of 5 feet for covered porches and balconies. Covered porches and entries through the current City of Edmonds code have to meet those same setbacks as right above for single family. So usually that's 20 to 25 feet from the street and so on. And then we really only allow for a small encroachment into those setbacks by about 30 inches. Both cases allow for parking spaces within those required setbacks, so that we currently allow that now. Next slide. And then lot coverage. So model ordinance it's unlike, I'm going to kind of skip over the sixplex. I think it's going to be pretty unlikely that we have sixplexes here in Edmonds. But for your information, it would be 55% maximum structural lot coverage. And for five, so what we're probably going to see more likely in Edmonds is going to be a unit density of 4 that would have a 50% structural lot coverage. And then the duplexes that are going to be allowed throughout the single family zones will be at 45%. Again, this is an option in order to facilitate the middle housing development. So current code, we have 35%. That's for all single family zones. That includes all structures, including unconditioned spaces such as detached garages, sheds, art studios, etc. And then multifamily, again, is very similar to what we're seeing in the model ordinance, which is 45% across all of the RM zones. And then FAR, that's maximum floor area ratio. That's a unit that many cities use. We do not use FAR. However, it does allow for a lot of flexibility. It uses interior floor area divided by total site area. The model ordinance would apply that to all conditioned interior floor area. So that would not include, again, those unconditioned spaces, detached garages, unconditioned basements, play structures, things like that. And so this is something that we may be considering just to add a little bit more flexibility. Since it is the total square footage relative to the lot in various configurations that can be a little bit more flexible than structural lot coverage. And next slide. And so then there are design standards. Again, none of these are all optional. However, if we were to apply these to middle housing, we would also have to apply them to all zones that have a single family use, because we need to regulate middle housing the same as that we re-regulate single family housing. And we don't have any design standards for single family zones at this point. So these are just a couple optional suggestions that the model ordinance has. So, paved pedestrian access between units, alley, vehicles must use an alley if there is alley access. And then the location of driveways and off-street parking. The intent here is to kind of have a little more human scale and to have less of those garage driveways right up front on the street side. So kind of limiting the frontages. And then not having any carports or detached garages extending beyond that front building facade. If you remember back to the dimensional standards, there is a different setback for a garage than a front door by 5 feet back. So instead of 15, it would be 20. And then limits on those driveway widths as well. And then again, middle housing will be applicable in RM zones. There are some design standards there as well, but again, all design standards would need to be uniform across middle housing, multifamily, and single family zones. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is something I'm going to quickly go through because this is really not my specialty here. So this is really something that would be evaluated and addressed by the public works and the fire departments. So again, regulations for driveways, frontage improvements, alley improvements, and other public works and engineering standards cannot be more restrictive than they are for those single-family homes. However, there are exemptions in the model ordinance, and that is just going to allow for some fire access roads. Again, we are happy to address any questions you have here, but we do need to speak with the fire, South County Fire, and the Public Works before answering any of these questions this evening. So I'm just going to kind of show these slides as, again, options for improved access in case of fire and other public works needs. Okay, so next slide, please. And again, these are just some optional regulations for driveways and a separate access points, and then the fire code as well. And I cannot speak to these, but these are part of the model ordinance, and I just want to show them here. Okay, next slide. Okay, so I think Navusha is going to take it from here in regards to the interaction between House Bill 1110 and some of the other House bills that were passed in 2023.
Thanks, Rose. In 2023, state has passed three main House bills. It's 1337, which is all about ADUs. That House bill specifies that we need to allow two ADUs on each applicable lot. And the Middle Housing Bill, which is the House Bill 1110, talks about increasing the density with different typology of housing. And the 1220, which is the main one, that kind of requires cities to differentiate between housing needs based on affordability levels. So we need to kind of plan for sufficient capacity of housing under each income levels. So this is something we are working on as a part of the comprehensive plan process. If you're following that, we have certain growth targets that we received from the county, and that we have certain numbers that we need to achieve for ADUs for middle housing units and for something which are above 120 median income levels. So considering ADUs as a part of middle housing is something optional. Cities can choose whether they want to include ADUs in middle housing or whether they want to keep it separate. So for the city of Edmonds, if we include ADUs as a part of middle housing, that might result in a situation where we need to plan for around 900 additional units, which is why we have taken a decision that we do not want to include ADUs as a part of these middle housing units. So that's something that's clearly discussed as a part of the comprehensive plan growth alternatives. When this webinar is posted online, you can find the link of that presentation as well. So it's easier to understand how 1110 and 1337 overlap with each other. Again, there is a possibility of having some discussion around that when we get into developing the standards and having detailed conversations with the community around that. But at this stage, this is a staff level decision that was made as a part of the comprehensive plan process. Moving on, so we have the deadline to adopt regulations for the middle housing is within 6 months after the comprehensive plan update. So the periodic update due date is end of the year, which is December 2024. So we have till June 2025 to adopt the regulations for middle housing. Very soon, we will have internal discussions and staff preferences for a lot of the standards that we just discussed. And once we have the next guidance from the state, which says summer 2024, we will be discussing that with the planning board early in August. And then eventually we will have conversations with the council as well. We will have open houses and community meetings regarding this throughout the process, where community can keep providing us comments and kind of involved in the whole process. So it's not just this webinar or it's not just this one particular meeting. There are a lot of opportunities that will be coming, and we do have a web page that clearly shows all the key dates and upcoming meetings, and whatever new information we're gonna do, it will be posted to the website. So please do visit www.edmonds.gov/middle housing. And you can always send us questions through email. It's just the same email address as the comprehensive plan. Everyone's edmonds@edmonds.gov. Please use the subject line HB1110 or middle housing, just so that we differentiate questions for the comp plan versus questions for the middle housing. And also I copy pasted a link for the Ask Us form. That's an open channel where you can always send us questions or comments whenever it is. So that's all it. And I don't see any questions in the chat as well. Oh. Doug has raised his hand.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I can get my camera working.
Because this is a webinar, the camera option might not be available.
No, that's okay. So the reason I attended this meeting this evening, you know, I had the choice of watching the debates, but I thought this was more important. And is, you know, just the house north to me, a couple bought it. They both have full-time jobs and 2 children. And they paid, you know, $935,000 for the house, which is pretty affordable, which is not affordable. It's pretty expensive. So what you're doing is, so in Edmonds, you have houses that, you know, people have to pay about $1 million for with 2 families. So it puts a lot of pressure on the family. Now, affordable housing, if you take a look at the an ADU, that's just a rental income situation. And if you take a look at 2 units per house or per lot, say you tear a house down, that's not affordable. No builder will take that on, because you'd have to have the house sell for excess of $1 million just even to break even, right? So the gentrification needs to happen if the city is going to grow. And for a city to grow, it needs to raise tax revenues. And if you take a look at Shoreline and any place in King County, especially on the west side, you have what I used to call tall and skinnies, but what it is, it's condensed housing. Now, some of those homes are attached and some of them are detached. And when you have a house that is where you can have a family that's affordable, and I think in our market, $750,000 would be a very affordable home. But if you have that, then remember how all this started after World War II with, you know, getting the middle class geared up, was to have people buy houses and have it affordable houses to do that. But things are getting very expensive, especially on the West Coast. Not so different from California before the, you know, the market turned down. So, you know, we're kind of like in a way, California in that growth rate, and the prices of homes are getting higher. But in order to really make affordable housing, you have to have more inventory, and everything you've laid out so far, from my perspective, you're not going to be able to do that because you're too restricted on your lot, just two houses per lot in a residential community. That's not going to happen. And I'm here to learn, and I thought your presentation for an introductory presentation was excellent. So I want to tell you both that. But there's things that just don't make sense.
Sure, Doug. We hear you. Thanks for the input. I mean, it's a long process, and House Bill 1110 is just one part of it. So there's
Sure.
really existing affordable, and there's something that we keep creating as we move forward with all these House bills and updating the code and having incentives and things like that. So it's difficult, it's challenging, but I guess with the comprehensive plan, that's what we are trying to achieve, to keep in place certain policies that will eventually direct us in kind of moving towards the final goal. Um, I mean, smaller units and different typology of housing units on all the single family lots will kind of be a solution in the long run. And also two lots, two units per lot is the minimum, and we can identify certain locations where we can add more units if required. Our centers and hubs kind of show that approach in the comprehensive plan as well. So where exactly we will be allowing 2 units per lot and where we can allow more than 2 units is something which is open for discussion at a later stage. But that's yeah, all these conversations will probably lead to making some of the decisions that where the city has some flexibility.
Well, you also have an example. You can look at King County. And, I've appraised a lot of homes in King County. And the tall and skinnies, or the more affordable homes, or the condensed housing homes, whatever you want to call it, it gives people a chance to actually buy a home and raise a family. Yes, like an inner city, they don't have a big yard where they can go out in the backyard and play baseball or anything like that, but it gives them a chance to be homeowners. If you have a situation like where I currently live, and I don't live downtown, I live above the hill. And you have a situation where it costs $1 million just to get into a home. That's 2 working adults that have at least over 120 grand a year in income. And these folks that I'm referencing actually have 2 kids and a dog. And so it makes it very difficult to live here. And the other thing is there's no inventory. So I'm not telling you what to do. I've seen a lot on how houses are done. I have a lifetime of experience in that. And, I was just very curious as how you're going to adapt to the environment of increased population. And with global warming, you see it happening right now. There's global warming, but you go outside, there's not global warming. People are going to look for a place to live. And I remember back in 1993, I heard the Exxon CEO saying people would have to adapt to where they live because global warming. They knew global warming was coming then. And what he meant by that is people are going to be moving north. That's just in relation to the United States. Other countries have a different deal, and their geographically this location is different and stuff like that. But people are going to move north, and we also have water here, potable water. And you take a look at what's happening in Arizona. I was licensed down there for years. And you take a look at what's happening down there, they have water shortages, and they have homes that they can only bring water in. But we have a really viable culture here. We have high tech, we have great industry here, and Edmonds is a great place to live. I mean, I can't imagine living anywhere else. And that's another problem, is that people are aging out. I'm actually aging out myself. And people are aging out, and they're going to go into condominiums or whatever, but a lot of people are aging out and they can't afford to live here anymore in Edmonds. And that's kind of heartbreaking, because I've seen that. And they don't want to leave Edmonds because it's a place of comfort for them. Okay, that's the end of my spiel.
Sure, well, yes, we agree with that. We all love Edmonds.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Okay, there's a question in the chat that says, you say Edmonds is not going to allow ADUs.
And I can take that. Actually, that's not correct. ADUs ADUs are already allowed within Edmonds. It was just attached on June 19th. The Council of formally adopted an update to the ADU code, which will allow for 2 ADUs per lot, and that includes DADUs. And again, if you want more information on that, that would be at www.edmondswa.gov/ADU. And I'll go ahead and put that in the webinar chat as well if you want to view that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have another question. I was the one that got confused on the ADUs. So you guys are going to allow ADUs. And you're going to follow HB 1337
Correct.
under certain conditions. I'm wondering, I have a piece of land in Edmonds that is totally buildable. It's on 196. It's 2.5 acres. It's flat. And right now it's basically it's zoned out. Half of it's zoned multifamily and half of it's zoned single family. And so my family's owned it for 33 years. And we tried to make the zoning so a development would work. I applied for a rezone in 1995 and we lost 3-4. So my question is, I talked to Jeff Levy the other day, and he said that the piece of property that my family owns is going to be zoned all multifamily. How do I confirm that? And then which multifamily? Because there's going to be several multifamily zones. Is that correct?
I can answer the first part of the question. Is that correct, Rose? Do we have 2 zones, different types of?
Yeah, so I think first off, I might be able to just answer the whole thing. First off, with 1110, all zones that allow for single family use or residences will be allowed to have duplexes at a minimum. So that would be the minimum zoning that you would see there. And then in terms of any sort of rezones, potentially there will be multifamily is probably going to be called something else. We're going to have to, reevaluate how we are naming different zones, and there's going to be different zones of intensity of upzoning for residential uses, and that what we have to do is up to 4, again, as we said. So
Right,
typically,
4 with 1 affordable.
correct. Or if you're within that half mile of a transit station. But typically what you're going to see throughout is that 2 units per parcel. Again, there are going to be areas that are going to be upzoned, and those are probably most likely going to be areas that are already multifamily. And then
Yeah,
and
like
I don't know which areas those are. Navusha might be able to answer that a little bit more than I could.
Sure.
yeah, we're along 196, and like the prior gentleman, the appraiser, talked about the the upright zoning where you have 3 floors, and that provides a lot of middle income housing. There's an example right on the screen right now in the middle where they have 3 floors and they're attached. It's a 4-plex. I think that's a good example of what could be done. And that would fall right in, I think, as a price. I mean, I've had interested builders, some of the largest builders in the country, they're interested in it. And that's the kind of housing they're talking about. And so one of them would have to be affordable. Question is, how many would be allowed per lot? And how's that going to be decided? Like right now, the front of the property, the front acre is RM 2400. So it's 2,400 square feet per unit. And it can either be apartments or it could be condominiums. And then the back is RS 8000, which is a sort of archaic Edmonds zoning. they've had those very large lots for a very long time, even after the Growth Management Act tried to lower the size of those lots. So I guess my question is, like you said before, there's MF2, right? MF2 zone, we were talking about dimensional standards, 40 by 120 lot, 40 feet height, 40% lot coverage, 2 parking spaces, maximum density 20 units, 20 dwellings per acre. That would be the RM2 zone. So has the city come up with any multiple family examples for multiple family zones that they don't currently have? They currently have RM 1500, RM 2400, and RM 3000.
So I think that the best way to answer your question is for middle housing, there's 9 typologies that can take place. And so again, the multifamily zones, as you're speaking of them, the 1.5, 2.4, etc., that's
Right.
likely going to have to be amended to allow for this middle housing. And there may be certain zones in those multifamily areas that will be upzoned, and that for middle housing that would be up to 6plex. Again, that would just be in certain areas. So again, I'll just go through those 9 types: duplexes, triplexes, 4plexes, 5plexes, and 6plexes,
Right.
townhomes, stacked flats, courtyard apartments, and cottage housing. So
Right.
we would have to choose, policy would be to choose 6 of those types as
Right.
middle housing. Now, the other thing that could happen within that multifamily zone is it could get further upzoned to something that wouldn't be middle housing, that would be more like an apartment complex or something like that. Again, I don't
yeah,
know if we know what those are going to look like at this point. Like we're at a very preliminary stage right now.
Okay, so just one last question then. How should I noticed your the timeline that you showed, but is there someone, I mean, is it Jeffrey that I talked to about, the possibility, or is it one of you two that I could talk to get a little bit more specific?
Sure.
I mean, off the screen,
Of
more
course.
specific questions.
Of course, you can always come in person and ask us these questions, or you can also.
Are you guys planners at the oh, good. Okay, great.
So, Kirti, to answer, just to add on to what Rose said, is the city developing new multifamily zones? So it's a yes and no answer. As a part of the comprehensive plan, we're also exploring on creating some new zones and identifying areas where what typology of housing can be allowed as a part of this house bills. So that's something we are working on, and we won't be able to give you a specific answer at this stage. But by the end of the year, we'll have a preferred plan from both the growth alternatives we were discussing. So at that stage, we will be able to tell you for sure whether your property is going to get rezoned, or if yes, what's it changing to, and things like that. So we'll have a future land use map that kind of dictates how the zoning should be in the future. And that's that's probably the end of the year.
That's the comp plan, right?
Yes, so as a part of that, we will make these decisions, which will eventually transform to the zoning and code amendments and all of that. So it's.
And how can I comment on the comp plan? Can I think it would be good for the city to understand,
Of course.
that I do want the property to be developed, and it is a very large piece compared to what is left in the city, and it's very developable.
Sure.
And it's also not down in the bowl, which I don't think the bowl should be disturbed too much, because I think it's a wonderful
Correct.
amenity.
We agree.
But this is up on the hill on 196.
So if you want to provide comments, you can always go onto the comprehensive plan webpage and you'll find a comment box there at the bottom. So you can just send us your comments, and also we will come back to the community and have neighborhood level meetings for each of those center and hub locations. And that's when we will be discussing the extent of growth and the height limitations and things like that with the community members. Eventually, it's the council's decision, but these conversations will be happening soon in October. So that would be a better opportunity for you to come in person and share your thoughts and talk something specific about your parcel if it's around, you said 196th, right?
Yeah, it's 196. It's 7833.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah, 196.
right. Okay.
So we're not sure on what these new zonings are going to look like for multifamily yet.
Not for now, correct.
Okay, that's my main question. And then the next, and I can come in and talk to you guys, but it's really not going to do any good until maybe October or November.
Correct.
Okay, I will do that, and I'll try to come to some more meetings too. Thank you so much, and you guys did a great job on your presentation. It looks like it took a lot of work.
Rose, there's another question on ADUs. Do you want to take it? ADUs or DADUs are for extended family or rental.
So again, I encourage you to go to the website. You can see the whole ordinance there. The ADUs and DADUs, we do not regulate who uses them. So that could be for extended family rental. And then at this point, short-term rental as well.
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
All right.
Why don't we get to the, I think we have another person with their hand raised, unless you're the only one here.
I have raised my hand again.
Okay,
So
ahead.
I got to tell you, is it my turn now?
yes.
Okay, I think you guys got a great job. And I think doing this is really exciting. If you have any interest, and I built houses, I developed land. I'm retired right now, and I really have a lot of information in my head. And I'd love to download this information to you if you were interested in it. I know how much things cost to develop and build, and I know what's practical and what's not practical. If you ever want to talk to me, I'm available. It's just for the heck of it, right? That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. Yep. So, we want to talk to you about this as well. Anyone who has anything to say about this, and, come in to see us. You can use the Ask Us form. You can email the Everyone's Edmonds, page that's right up on this last slide here. And, that's what these forums are for. And
Okay.
that's what, we're here to do.
Okay, so the thing is I'm not going anywhere because I'm at the age, if I do get COVID, which is a very real thing, it could put me down. So my wife and I basically haven't been out of the house in years. We get our groceries delivered. But what you're doing, you can really develop this city. This is a great city. And I agreed with the landowner that asked the other question, was that leave the bowl alone. I love that down there. But okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you. You both did a fabulous job. And thanks for doing it.
Absolutely.
Now we all go watch the debate.
Unless we have more questions. Only looks like we're 13 minutes into it, so yet still time if you want to go watch the other thing that's going on tonight.
I've read the ordinances, and I think at this point, it's a very fluid situation. And like you say, at the end of the year, you guys have to put forth the comp plan. And that's going to put general zoning on the map. I'm hoping that the zoning will be split between single family and multifamily. But like you say, the city may come up with very different, interesting zones that we've never seen before because of this middle housing bill. So that's really, my question would be, do I need to have input on the comp plan, or would it be better for me, considering my property would need to be rezoned, to come in January or February after the comp plan is done and focus on the rezones?
Well, I will encourage you to be part of neighborhood level discussions in October. If you are on our mailing list, you will receive emails about our upcoming meetings. You can sign up on our webpage. Just go for Everyone's Edmonds or Comprehensive Plan Edmonds.
And
And
Navusha, those are hybrid, correct? So he can join via Zoom.
we haven't decided the format yet.
Okay.
Yeah, probably they'll be hybrid, but that's something we will be able to update you on if you're on the mailing list.
Okay, great.
I guess that's it for today. The webinar will be recorded, and the Ask Us form as well as our email channel will be open all the time. So please encourage your friends, neighbors, and family to have a look at the slide deck and post any questions you have. All the questions we receive, we will be creating an FAQ document and we will publish it on the webpage.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. Good job. And I don't think I'm going to watch the debate. It just makes me angry. Too hard.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good evening.